Remember divisive social media influencer Andrew Tate, who is currently charged with rape, human trafficking, and forming a criminal gang to sexually exploit women? Well, he and his brother are blasting critics who say they're responsible for a recent grisly crime. Andrew's brother Tristan Tate weighed in on the gruesome killing of a 15-year-old girl in South London by a 17-year-old boy on Wednesday. He railed against the suspect, who's now in custody, but in doing so, he emphatically sounded off on critics, blaming him and his brother Andrew Tate for influencing the murder. Let's take a look.
In a world where every man takes Andrew and Tristan Tate's advice, this does not happen. That is not masculinity. That is the opposite of masculinity. That is acting out to your emotions, feeling sad, feeling rejected, and lashing out with violence. Everything we preach, from stoicism, self-accountability, emotional control, would have prevented this from happening. And it pisses me off that they'll attack Andrew, ban him from schools, plaster his face all over every newspaper, and say that he's a danger.
The Tate brothers were not involved in the fatal stabbing, but it didn't stop critics from blaming them on social media, claiming the event is a byproduct of the Tates' rhetoric. Young men are being brainwashed and radicalized by the influencers. Tate was previously banned from various prominent social media platforms for expressing misogynistic views and for quote-unquote hate speech. Fans of the brothers pushed back against those pointing the finger at them following this grisly attack, maintaining violence is in opposition to what they preach.
All right, I just want to say up top, there's no connection between the Tate brothers and this killing. It's not even a situation where there was a manifesto or something where we know that the alleged killer followed the Tate brothers or did so at the instruction or the perceived instruction of the Tate brothers. There's no there specifically. That being said, I want to give voice to why people are saying this. The argument is that there is a now widespread and pernicious culture of content creators like the Tate brothers who very explicitly talk about using misogynistic language and tools of control to get women to do what they want to do. They say things like, we don't support violence, but there have been videos where the Tates have bragged about their collection of knives and how they can use them to threaten and coerce women to do X, Y, and Z. He's obviously being charged with what is at best characterized as a fraud scheme where he preys on the self-esteem of women so that they do sex work on camera for him and pay him all of the vast majority of the profits without keeping much of it for themselves. He is on camera saying things like, I tell them that I'm collecting this money from them because I need to pay taxes, but there are no taxes, I'm just pocketing it. I mean, the gap between how they present themselves and what they have said on camera is as wide as the Grand Canyon. That doesn't mean I think they're directly responsible for this, of course, but we should put in context that there's a reason why people are asking this question of what there's a cultural trend that is causing boys to not see girls as full human beings and therefore be more likely to take their lives or do violence against them. Yeah,
I find that there is a pre-existing level of mental health concern among young men. Who feel aggrieved by the system for whatever reason, who feel that their generation is not getting involved in long-term relationships, maybe they're not having as much sex as they would like, and generally feeling a lack of connection amongst their peers and with society. But that predates the Tate brothers. And I think the problem that I have with generally the sort of manosphere movement, at least a large chunk of it, is that they're prescribing the wrong solution to these disaffected men because they're actually sending them further down a rabbit hole of failing to treat other people with respect, failing to see people as fully realized humans, and of basically putting on a show of what they perceive to be an alpha masculinity. Mm-hmm. And the Tate brothers, in their response to being blamed for this grisly crime, are saying, well, we preach self-control and bottling up your emotions. And it's like...
As they shout into the camera.
Right, as they're screaming at the camera.
Half naked.
I don't know if it's like, from my religious perspective, I'm a traditional Catholic. I feel like there is positive masculinity, and there are ways to address the disaffected men in our society in ways that support the the biological deep predispositions of men and masculine men in particular. But those values are about responsibility, about actually being in tune with your emotions and knowing when is the proper time to express them, and also being protectors and providers. None of that is synonymous with, I think, the vision that they present, which is more of an aggressive position. And aggression is a part of masculinity that can be used in positive and negative ways. I don't feel like they're using it in a positive way.
I mean, they're being exploitative.
Right.
So this is also coming on the heels of another controversy involving a different manosphere streamer named Sneeko. I confess, perhaps due to my big age, I had never heard of this young man before this viral video, but apparently this Sneeko person did a meet and greet and seemed to be shocked by the nature of the statements that these very young boys, they look to be what, like 10, 11, 12, 13? I'm not good at ages. We're saying, so we can't play the video, but the kids were saying to him, F the women, F the women. And when he interrupted and said, no, we love women, the kid said, we love women, okay, but like not transgenders. They then said, F gays, all gays should die. He interrupted again, no, all of those kinds of things. And then he looks at the camera and says, what have I done? Kind of like joking, but seeming a little rattled by what these very young children were saying. He later issued a kind of apology, and then we just showed a tweet up on the screen where he's injecting himself into this Andrew Tate discourse, quoting somebody who is attributing the murder to incel culture that he is arguably a part of, and saying, well, this is why women shouldn't vote. Not exactly making the case that he is someone who is not contributing to the level of misogyny that may or may not have an impact on a 17-year-old boy as he looks at a 15-year-old girl and decides whether or not her life is really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disconnect that I have with these people is they hit on some of the, I mean, I guess similar to what I'm saying, the positive aspects of masculinity and ways that men can use those traits for good. They talk about becoming a provider, for example, the Tates do. Mm-hmm. But for them, the end goal is not so you can be in a loving relationship and get married and take care of your family and be an example for your kids. It's so that you can bag women. Yeah. And so you can have sex with them.
And to literally exploit them. I mean, he only has money. He makes his money off of exploiting women's labor. He's not bringing home the bacon to support these women. He has women. He pretends to be in a relationship with them, gets them emotionally entangled, convinces them to go on camera and do sex acts so he can get rich and they can stay poor. That is the opposite of being a provider, even if you subscribe to traditional values. There's also this really toxic, I gotta say, competitive vibe between men and women right now. Every podcast is men explaining why they shouldn't have to do things for women and women explaining why they shouldn't have to do things for men. And the idea of partnership and mutual aid, however that comes, whichever one is the winner, whichever one is able, because of their personal skills, better at home care or child care or whatever, it seems to be, no, I'm going to withhold whatever gifts I can bring to this relationship because it's not reciprocal. And it feels like a race to the bottom.
Yes, it's a very transactional view of relationships. I mean, people are basically turning relationships into business arrangements.
Yeah, but even if it's transactional, I mean, cynically, marriage has always been a kind of, historically been a kind of a business relationship.
But
at
it's
least
not
it's
about
mutualistic. Exactly. It's supposed to be, because it's hard to go it alone. And if you join forces, you can have a better life together.
Yes.
But everyone's withholding now, and it has become this game of who can exploit who can get the most out of it. How can I get a man who makes the most money and I don't have to bring anything to the equation? How can I get a girl who's hot and she's got to do what I want her to do in the home and in bed and all those things without me being a provider or bringing anything, even kindness, to the equation?
Right. Like I hear this, there's this female influencer who talks about a lot of the same stuff named Pearl. Mm-hmm. And she goes on these rants about how basically women lose all value after 35. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, you're trying to make the point that like women's fertility declines at a certain point and men want to marry younger women so they can have more babies or whatever. But this is such a cynical view of a relationship, again, because when you're 35 and let's say you get married, and there's plenty of women at 35 who get married because older men also like older women.
Well,
I mean, not you know what I mean? Like, not like in a cougar standpoint. But if you're a 40-year-old man, like, you're not going to scoff at a 35-year-old woman if you're healthily adjusted. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah, it's not.
Sure.
It's not 100% across the board, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're saying.
It's not like a hard and fast rule. But I saw some conservatives responding to her and saying, you know, I value my wife even more now than when we got married because she has now taken a leadership role with our children, right? She has either homeschooled or she's in charge of making sure they get to school and she keeps house. And it's like, just, I think attaching women's value to just attractiveness and fertility kind of misses the point.
I mean, Pearl goes even farther. She says, you know, if you are not a virgin, that you have no value. It's not even just about age. And it is interesting, she is both single and not a virgin, so it's unclear where all this kind of weird projection is coming from, but that's none of my business. That's between her and a mental health practitioner, should she choose to see one. All right, that's probably it for this segment. Stick around, we have more Rising for you right after this.